Welcome to the show. We are back for another episode of Oh So Curious. A couple of curious minds today. Another Sunday, another episode of the show where we talk about movies, TV, streaming, music, existential philosophies of life. And of course, today I am joined by the purveyor of awesomeness, the man who brought to us hits like movie. No, what was it? What did you do? I'm stumbling on my words. You did the show intro tier list. That was fun. Roland, before I trip over any further, how you doing?
The greatest and worst hype man I've ever seen
I'm
in my
sorry. I'm
life.
sorry. I was
It was going, had all those verbs that were like, oh, awesome and great, and then just
yeah,
just
just
flatlined,
dropped the ball.
just dropped
What
it.
can I say? What can I
Crazy.
say?
I'm good. Surprisingly, I'm good after what I just heard. But how are you,
Yeah.
Dan? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I am stumbling over myself is how I'm doing apparently.
That's how I
Yes.
guess.
Yeah, that's how it goes sometimes, that's how the cookie crumbles, as they say.
Yeah. This is
Um
this is how we bring the existential in your existential movie podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of podcast, do check our podcast out. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify. I believe we're on Amazon. We may be on Google as well. We're on the big, all the big platforms. You can check us out on Anchor, which is where we host the podcast. We post the new episode every week on Sundays. Usually the podcast goes up after we do the show live. Obviously, we're not podcasting live to Anchor, but do check it out. Sometimes you might be on the road, you might be doing other things, and you can't be in front of a YouTube video, so that's your time to check out the show on audio. However, if you want to check us out on video, if you want to follow us elsewhere, you could find us on social media. We are on all the big ones. We have a website, .com, as they say, the World Wide Webs. We are also on Twitter. We tweet sometimes. We don't tweet all the time. We're on Instagram. We post a lot of good reels. Roland talked about what he thought of See How They Run on Instagram earlier this week. Do check that
It's
out. We
true.
will go into more detail about that in the show later today. We're also on Facebook. We do live stream to Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube every week. So whatever flights your fancy, you can check us out on those platforms every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern time, like you are today. Or if you're watching this later, then 5 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday is when you can check us out live. We are, of course, your existential movie podcast. So today, let's kick things off, Roland. How about we do the rundown? I have been tasked to do the rundown because Roland decided he wanted to do the quick hits. So that's how we split the difference there. So let's do this. The rundown. Quick hits. As I just mentioned, Roland, you will be doing the quick hits, weekly movie news. Then we'll be talking about how the Batman, or should the Batman be the start of the new DCEU, and will that work? We'll debate about that. Rings of Power, we will review episode 4. That show's going on Amazon Prime. See How They Run, as I mentioned, Roland will be giving us his review of that movie, and then we will finish things up with a tribute to the Golden Girl, the timeless, the ageless, and of course the one who's not with us anymore, but nonetheless we would like to remember, Betty White. So Roland, what do you think about today's
All right.
show? How we got a packed show here. Anything you're looking forward
Feel
to more
good,
than others?
Yeah, Dan and I never really hang out, so this is cool. We have some buddy time
Yeah,
to.
this is different. This is like a different kind of vibe. I don't think we've ever done this combination before.
I
So
know.
yeah. Well, as we always do before we get into any of that stuff that we just mentioned, we usually, touch upon some open mic. And what that basically means, we're just gonna shoot the hay for a little bit. So Roland, how's your week been going?
My week's been good. I've been doing some filming. I went to a concert last night. I went to a Father John Misty, and it's an indie guy. He was really
Yes,
good.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
Sorry.
he was a lot of fun. And preparing. I'm gonna be doing a 48-hour film festival next week. So had a
Nice.
meeting for that on Friday and just getting things in order.
That's
What
awesome.
about you?
I did a few 48-hour film festivals back when I was in college, and like the communications department in my school which is basically like, the School of Communications is what my major landed under. They started holding this 48
Same.
hour film festival. They would usually do it like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So like, and then keep their facilities open. People are working overtime on the staff, keeping like the edit bays open, and like students can go to the studio and use all that stuff, which sucks for them. But like, it was always a fun
Yeah.
exercise because I think it's always a matter of managing your resources and obviously time. And I
Mm.
learned the hard way after. I mean, I did a few of them, so I learned through experience that you should always try to like not aim too high, because then you risk yourself like either ending up with a bad product, not finishing it at all, or in general just being super frustrated at the end because you're like, man, this didn't come out like the way I wanted it to. So, you know,
Yeah.
I think the funny fall I landed on the idea of follow that idiom, that timeless idiom of keep it simple, stupid whenever possible. Um, yeah, I tried to do some sci-fi short films and got a little
For a
too ambitious with the
48-hour film
VFX.
festival, you try to do sci-fi?
Well, so the category was sci-fi, so that kind of like um hamstrung me a little bit. Like you just kind of got handed the category. That's what I ended up. I don't know how they did it. I think it was either like you point at like something that was face down and they flip the card and you get the genre, or they picked it out of it. Whatever they did, I got sci-fi.
Yeah.
But you can do
Ooh.
good sci-fi without it being super VFX heavy, right? Like I mean, some
Yeah.
VFX here and there would be fine. Like, you could do the trip to the moon, and that a lot of that was just cuts. Like they were just doing jump cuts and stuff back then. They didn't
That's a
have,
good
I mean,
point.
the matte paintings and stuff, and that's some as they had some like actual, like, if like what would you call them, like physical, like special effects, like with smoke and stuff like that. But you don't have to do, I mean, I've actually done in back in college, I did this short film called The Clones, where,
Okay.
as you can imagine, it was a movie about clones. So I rebuilt this like prop like clone device, which had a red button and a blue button, and one of the buttons created a clone, the other one destroyed them or made them go away. Um, and
Oh,
this
I
is
think
well
I've
before
seen
the,
that actually.
have you? Yeah, you see
I
the
think you
effect
showed that
of,
during a meeting. It was cool. It was fun.
yeah. This is, by the way, was done well before Endgame ever came out, and now I'm like, you know what? This stole my idea of how those people are appearing and disappearing, all the clones, like the
Yeah.
little, no, I mean, obviously they did it, it was, I was just using like a particle simulator in After Effects, and they're probably using like Nuke and whatever other advanced render
Yeah.
engines. And anyway, it was fun though. The point of that movie was, it was a lot of sit the camera down and shoot multiple passes, and some with a green screen, some without a green screen. Make sure the lighting matches. Make sure you don't have a lot of bleeding going on with like the green screen, like reflecting green light on, because then you have to do a lot of color correction and like clean up, and
Yeah.
it's not fun. Getting clean keys was a big deal, because we weren't using like super high-end cameras. We were using like these Panasonic camcorders essentially. So they were shooting progressive, so it wasn't like a matter of you getting interlace footage, which makes it even worse, like trying to key interlace footage. But um, it wasn't like we were using like these mirrorless DSLRs, so getting clean keys was a concern, especially like around the hairs and stuff. And I think one of the guys had curly hair or like really messy hair, so. Um, but anyway, I think it came out well. I mean, I don't. You've seen it.
Yeah.
That wasn't a 24-hour or 48-hour thing, but I think that's the kind of thing you could manage to get done in 48 hours. Whereas what I tried to do one time was, I was trying to do this Terminator sort of like a rip off. There was a frying pan involved, which was one of the things on the list that we had to check off, which, you can only imagine the kind of hijinks, like a sci-fi short film that you need to use a frying pan in. And there was some weird line that we had to like say at some point, line of
Oh,
dialogue. Um,
I know what this is. Yeah, we've definitely talked about this one for
yeah,
sure.
Brian
Because
and I
Brian was
like
supposed to
worked
be
on it.
that Terminator.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was. There was like a big twist in there at the end. Like he's this guy who goes out and tries to like catch. He's basically like a contract, not like a mercenary of some kind. And so like he's the Terminator analog here. He has to go and capture whoever he's assigned to, and he's supposed to have like
Yeah.
this whole digital like display on his arm. So I would like put like a strip of green tape on his hand when we were filming, and then in post, like that just meant like I had to like track that. I had to like cut it out, and then I had to like add in like a digital like display there, and then that was a pain in the ass, like, because if just for like the insert shots where the camera is like locked down,
Yeah.
Not to mention like there was a couple of shots where he was moving things around and you're like, oh my God, I have to get into Mocha Pro to do this work. And it's like, that's not the kind of thing you can do in 48-hour film festival, as I came to
Yeah.
realize. So, um, but it was a fun thing to at least film, because when we shot it, like we were shooting in this parking garage the whole time, and parking garages are fun, a very interesting places to shoot stuff. So yeah. Oh my God, there's a cable stuck. Pain. Oh, am I doing this wrong? Oh yeah. Should I almost snap the cable? Sorry, I'm wearing this like earpiece and got stuck in the nook of the chair that I'm sitting on, and it was like it's pulling on the back of my neck.
Oh
It's
gosh.
painful.
Dan, you mentioned earlier about the MCU. Have you been keeping up with She-Hulk?
I have. Yeah, you know what? Let's dive into it. So She-Hulk episode 5. Oh man, what can I say? I've been watching this show for 5 episodes, as episode 5 would imply. Um,
As they do, you know.
yeah. Uh, the question on the screen is it getting better or worse? And honestly, I don't know what to say to that, because I feel like it hit rock bottom a couple of episodes ago. So I suppose you could say it's going up, but even then I wouldn't be inclined so much to say that it's getting better. So maybe it's just sort of hit like the level that it's supposed to be at, and it's just sort of coasting there, which is, I think, for me, like what's the worst part about all of this is that's a level that is a lot lower than what I expect of the MCU. Like, I think the quality that you expect from Marvel show or movie is and should be a lot higher than what this show has ultimately landed upon and it's sitting at. And it's unfortunate. It is like, for example, in this episode, so the whole episode is focused on the case with where it's Jennifer Walters v Titania LLC. So Titania,
Yeah.
played by Jamila Jamil. And what you get throughout the episode is like the main story is the court case. Then the side plot where um like the other people on her team, on Jen Walters' team, are going around looking for like superhero artifacts, and then we get a version of Edna Mode in the MCU, like the Incredibles. Like it's a dude, not a girl, but um that's the B story, and he refers to the Avengers as the Avengers, and I'm like, you get a couple of laughs out of it. There's some cringe humor. I'm not saying this is like all bad. Like, this show has its moments, it does, but it's just overall, I'm struggling to find like really what the point of this show is to exist, because the story isn't going anywhere. They set up a bunch of stuff, like a couple episodes. There's a Daredevil helmet. That's one of the spoiler alert. That's one of the things that happens in this. We get a tease that Daredevil is finally going to show up. Um, I should actually probably put up the. It's too late now. It's too late now, but I'll put it up
Too
anyway.
late. I've been
So
spoiled.
you've been spoiled. Well, you were spoiled before. Okay, never mind. I'm not. We talk about this stuff before we go on the air. So what concerns me the most about this show, as I mentioned, is there's like, this is the Edna Mode character, by the way. That's the side thing,
Okay.
the house thing we go on. Um, the main character, Jen Walters, played by, a great actress. She's doing, as I think, as well as she can under the circumstances. Tatiana Maslany is doing a fantastic job from what she's given. The problem is this show has terrible writing, like in a lot of places. Like I said, it has its moments, but by and large, like, it misses way more than it hits. Like, the fourth wall breaks don't land. I'm struggling to understand what the main character's motivation is. Like, you know, if I think the show, the writers sort of assumed, or maybe did not assume, but they intended She-Hulk becoming like, a Jen Walters becoming She-Hulk as being the inciting incident of the show, and that kind of being the main. But if you count for that as being the inciting incident, that's not really a conflict. I mean, unless you have a totally internalized conflict of, does she want to be a superhero or not? And if that is the case, then they're not addressing that in any level of detail that's reasonable either. But if that's not the main conflict, then where is the main conflict? Because we had that gang of guys. I don't know, they're comic book based, show a couple episodes ago attack her in the street, try to apparently get her blood, and she realized, oh, I'm a Hulk, and then she tossed them around like rag dolls and should have killed a couple of guys because like she tossed him into the air, the guy lands on the back of his neck, somehow still walks away from it. But point being, that was the only hint of conflict that we have gone up until this point. Like in the last episode, we had like Wong come in and we had a bunch of demons and him Wong doing Wong stuff. Um, getting rid of them. But again, there was a lot of like, there's been a lot of action in this show, which by the way, there hasn't been a lot of action. But whenever we have gone like an action sequence, they try to get you one an episode at least. It's almost like inconsequential to the character. It feels like they feel compelled to give her an action sequence simply so that she has some punching and kicking and some superhero like action to do without it really tying into, again, whatever her main character motivation is, whatever her active goal in the show is. And again, these are terms that writers would use when you're like when you're analyzing a script, when you're reviewing a movie. This is Robert McKee stuff. This isn't, I'm looking at it as a fan and obviously saying it's not leaving an impression on me, not a good one at least. But even from when you start breaking it down as a screenwriter, as a director, as a filmmaker, there's a lot of shortcomings here. So that's what's concerning to me is that 5 episodes in, there's 9 episodes, we're more than halfway through the show. If the saving grace is going to be Daredevil, then I don't know what the reason for the show to exist is, because the saving grace should be like what the main character is doing. Like Roland, what do you think about that?
It's just kind of, yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. And honestly, I've been hearing a lot of these complaints, and it just wasn't connecting until you just said that, because now I'm realizing you're absolutely right. This inciting incident was very passive. This conflict that she's dealing with, like, oh, I don't really want to be a superhero, I want to be a lawyer. She just keeps playing it off, just like it's just like a little comment, and it's kind of their excuse of like, oh, see, this is a major plot line, and it's not. And it's sad to like see all these jokes of like, oh, this isn't just a cameo show, and then that's literally all it is. We don't seem to be getting a lot of too much of a really engaged lawyer story that we were promised.
Yeah,
I mean, I do kind of like the LLC thing, just because, I mean, if you're gonna make it more lawyer, that's the way to go, because that is kind of an interesting premise, that she
right.
takes the she name.
It is. I mean, and to be honest, like some of like the courtroom drama stuff in this, it's not even like it's not good courtroom drama because the writers have, the main lead writers on the show said at one point when they were trying to promote the show. I don't know if they're being facetious or not, but it certainly seemed like they were saying like, hey man, we're not particularly good at writing legal stuff, but so we will try to like do our best here. And then a lot of the show has not really focused on getting like in the thick of like it's not Boston legal. This is You're not gonna get like heavy courtroom drama out of the show. But whenever
Yeah,
they do get into like the courtroom, they don't go very deep, and some of the arguments like of how this copyright law case is working, they don't even really hold up. Like I went and did some research. I'm like, Titania is suing Jen Walters for what reason exactly? Other people called her She-Hulk. She's not using that as a trademark to make money off of it. So on what basis is Titania saying you are doing like copyright infringing, like infringing on her copyright? Like it's not a trade. She's not using it as a trademark. So if Titania has a trademark, she can merchandise. Like for example, in real life, if She-Hulk was a character and like I was a journalist reporter and I was gonna go, I got pictures of She-Hulk like being a Hulk and doing whatever she's doing out there in the world, and I want to just like go into Photoshop and crop her out and put her on a T-shirt and start selling it, and then I was the first one to go trademark the name She-Hulk, then I would have the ability to do all that stuff. Like she can't come after me for that unless, she's like, oh, the stuff that's in the public domain, you just like snap the, like unless it's libel, unless so it wouldn't be a copyright
yeah,
issue, right? It would be a different kind of a thing. So some of like the legal drama stuff is not working for me either. And then like I said, I mean, if the saving grace ultimately is all these cameos, then I don't think that's a strong enough reason for a show like for a show any show to exist. Like a show shouldn't be based around like cameos, like as being its main like attraction. It should
yeah,
be a good character story. And I, as I mentioned this, I think I hinted at it. And, Jen Walters feels like a character in the show who is very passive. And the best comparison I can make is if you watch one of the Lord of the Rings movies, if you watch one of the Hobbit movies, the main characters in those shows, they're generally, or in those movies, they're generally passive. Like they go on this journey and everything around them, like a lot of the other characters like Gandalf and Aragorn, like all of those people are doing a lot of like the heavy lifting. And these guys, like they're doing something. It's almost like, or if you watch a Transformers movie and like Sam Witwicky, it's sort of just like going through like and all the stuff that the Transformers are doing, and he's just sort of getting flung around and screaming and getting picked up by these guys in their hands and like getting shoved into cars and out of off getting thrown off buildings. But even then, in some of those movies, they have like some kind of active goal, like something that that character is pursuing. In this show, she feels passive, and when I say she, I mean Jen Walters feels like she doesn't have an active goal to pursue other than she just wants to be a good lawyer and doesn't want to be a superhero, but she's stuck with being a Hulk. Um, and that's an internal conflict which I think works well if you're doing a character study, but this show is like very plot based, not very character based, while the main character has a very character study-esque internal conflict without a really good external conflict. So it just feels like the show is meandering and going nowhere. And to me, like ultimately, forget everything else, forget all the other criticisms, forget the CGI, which still, like it feels lacking, like in so many ways. Like the animation looks like it's it's not motion capture. It's like manual animation, and they're not doing a very good job of. You can see a lot of easy eases happening, easing in, easing out, and Bezier curves, and like I can almost imagine how some of those animations are being done in whatever program they're using to do it. The texturing isn't great, and then sometimes the lighting, like the specular highlights when you're in the courtroom scene, and like the way the sun bounces off one side of her face and how dark the other side of the face is, and the contrast and just how sharp the specular highlights are versus like a real person standing next to her and how the light's interacting with her. Like either that's a compositing issue or either it's a rendering issue. The lighting is not good. These CGI artists are not getting enough time. But like I said, put all of those mistakes aside, put all of those shortcomings aside. It's bad CGI, too many cameos, the comedy not working, the humor, the jokes not landing, the fourth wall breaks lacking. The biggest issue for me is the main character, as hard as Tatiana Maslany is trying, it's just Jen Walters doesn't have a lot to do in the show. She really doesn't. And that to me is the worst thing you can do to a show, is have a main character that the show is focused around, where the main character doesn't have much of anything consequential to do. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah. I don't know what else to say to that. I mean, I think that's about all I can add to the conversation for this, up to this episode at least. Here's to hoping the last 4 episodes pick up, and maybe when Daredevil shows up, the show will take a turn for the better. But so far, I don't know if it's getting better. I don't know if it's getting worse, but it hit rock bottom for me a long time ago, and it's certainly not picked up from there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we got
Anything to
a
add
new
there?
franchise. Oh, never mind.
No.
86.
Anything to add to that? I suppose. No. Yes.
No, not
No.
really.
All right. Well, if you guys are watching the show and you feel the same way that I do, or maybe you love the show, let us know. Follow us on social. You can comment on the video on YouTube. Leave a comment below. Hit the like button, of course. Subscribe if you like our content. We talk about She-Hulk every week, so we look forward to, of course, you know, having you tell us what you were thinking about the show. There's 4 more episodes left to go here, so we're hoping, fingers crossed, that things are going to get better. But let us know what you think. So now moving on, Roland, of course, as we made the deal, I did the rundown, I did the show open, so that means you get to do the quick hits. So I'm gonna roll you right into quick hits. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm so ready.
All right.
So
Well, here
excited.
we go.
Alrighty then. Time for some quick hits, as they say. Here's what happened this week. First off, the Sony sets release date for The Karate Kid. Now, we don't know the director or who's in it, or really anything about it. We do know that we're returning to the old Karate Kid series, and that's it. Hopefully Karate or Cobra Kai fans are excited as I am. And then On Broadway news, closing in 2023 is Phantom of the Opera after a 35-year run. Tickets are about to be on sale, I believe. So if you're a good Broadway fan, get it, because this is your last chance. And if you love Blade Runner, and if you like Blade Runner 2099, well, guess what? There's a TV show coming soon to Amazon Prime. Now, I don't believe Ana de Armas or Ryan Gosling is going to be in this, but who knows? Maybe we'll get a cameo, maybe better cameos than She-Hulk is doing right now. That's a dig, as they say. And after the D23 convention, we saw that Avengers: The Kang Dynasty is up and going, and they've hired Jeff Loveness to write for it. He did some Jimmy Kimmel stuff and has done some things here and there, so it'll be interesting to see how he hooks his teeth into this material. Keanu Reeves returns as Constantine, sequel coming soon. I know a lot of people this is a very controversial film. As a standalone, it was really fun. It wasn't necessarily accurate to the comics, but who knows? Maybe it'll be a mixture of both. All I know is it's going to be a good time. That's them quick hits. Tell us what you think in the comments. Here we like talking about movie, TV, streaming, and we like to know your opinion too. Please talk to us. We're very desperate. Not desperate, but just like needy, possibly. I'm needy for you as a fan. And I think it'd be really cool if you joined our movie fan community. You can see us on any podcast platform. Please follow us. Please like. Please subscribe. You know how it goes. And I'm going to tell you again. Please like and subscribe. Please comment, because I like you. And I hope you like us too.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, that was good. That was good. Cool. All right. Well, let's talk about can the Batman start a new DCEU? So we're gonna have a little debate here. But let me kind of set the table first. So this came up on social media. I was kind of like checking out, what's trending as I do, looking for stories for quick hits and whatnot throughout the week. And one of the things that was like a theme over the course of the week was the Batman as a movie. Can it be like a foundation and the starting point of a new DCEU, similar to how Man of Steel kicked off the current DCEU? Can the Batman sort of do that and then maybe do a fresh start, just do over, whatever you want to call it? So Roland, I guess let's start there. I mean, what do you think about that idea as in general? And then we will dive into the pros and cons of it too. But I just want to start by asking you, do you think the Batman can start a new DCU? Do you think it's a good idea?
Two different things. One, I think they can absolutely do it. I think if they spend enough time and dedication, they can do anything. And especially with all the positive feedback that they got from the Batman, I think it's very easy for them to go back in this very grunge world and go with this, honestly, a quite different version of gritty that Zack Snyder was trying to create, and kind of bring these centered, out of these world beings to the screen. I think they can absolutely do it. And it would be really cool to see the twist that they would have on all these iconic characters. Now, whether or not they should do it is a different question. Personally, I know we had some quite different opinions of the Batman than a lot of the general audience did. But
I mean, I actually changed my opinion because after I watched it at home, like I watched it once in theaters and then I watched it at home later. And the second time I watched it, I was thinking a lot less about, let's say The Dark Knight and how it compares to that masterpiece, and much more on like judging it on its own merits. And I think I had a much better time with it. And I think it's honestly a fantastic movie, and in my opinion, probably one of the top 2 or 3 movies of the year so far. Maybe it might actually be. Well, no, I think Top Gun for me is my favorite, but it's up there.
I was gonna say,
Yeah. No, but you continue. My opinion on it has improved since my first viewing. I don't know about you though.
I saw it once in theaters, and I kind of rewatched some clips, and I did watch some breakdowns before and after we did the taping, and I liked a lot of aspects of it. And I will always say that. I will always try to keep a little optimism whenever I do a review. There's definitely some really cool things that I loved with it. For example, I love a good emo Bruce Wayne. That I feel like that's a very important part to the Batman lore that not everybody necessarily follows. But they went for it. You know, you looked at that guy and you're like, oh yeah, he was sad. He listened to MCR like all the time in high school. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah, no, he had this like emo rock star sort of a vibe, and I think it's Robert Pattinson said he was getting inspiration from what's the I think was he the lead singer in Kiss or because
Gene Simmons.
Keith Richards, is that it? Am I or
Keith
the Rolling
Richards is
am I
oh
connecting the
gosh,
wrong
that's
dots
Rolling
here?
Stones, I believe.
But
Yeah.
am I on the right am I on the right track there or no? No.
Well, I mean, he's the guitarist for Rolling Stones, but
Oh, Rolling Stones.
he's
Yeah,
definitely like he's a rocker. Yeah.
right. That's I think like Rob Pattinson said that's kind of what he was going um that's what he was going for. So um but yeah, I mean the question so I mean people have different opinions about the movie. I think by and large a lot of people liked it. It made more than $750 million at the box office, so clearly it was a hit.
Of
And
course. Yeah.
they've commissioned a sequel at this point. I don't think they've officially greenlit it, but Matt Reeves has been working on a new script. Robert Pattinson's on board. They brought out both the director, I mean, and Pattinson and Reeves came out and talked about it um, at CinemaCon earlier this year. We know that the Penguin show on HBO Max is still going ahead. Matt Reeves
Oh
just
yeah, I
signed
forgot
a
about
new
that.
over yeah, and then Matt Reeves just signed a new overall deal with Warner Brothers. So he's gonna be working with them for a long time to come, and obviously a big part of that time is going to be spent working on this franchise. So naturally, you got to wonder. I mean, they're going to continue to make projects within the world of the Batman, and not only
Yeah.
movies, but obviously other TV shows and other tie-in properties as well. So if you were to bring in like superpowered heroes like Superman or a Wonder Woman or a Flash or a Green Lantern or Aquaman or Cyborg or the Martian Manhunter or Shazam, Black Adam, those kind of characters, they all have these superhuman abilities. Some of them like supernatural tinge, some of them feel very sci-fi-ish, some of them feel more mythical, god, demigod-like things. But the world that we have seen in this movie that's been created by the Batman, can those superpowered heroes work in the Matt Reeves world that he has made, and for this very grounded, gritty, dark world where like the character of the Riddler was a serial killer, and a very intimidating one at that because of how close to reality he hit sometimes with like the way they
Yeah.
portrayed him. And Paul Dano obviously was a great actor, but the question that I have for you obviously is, can you take that world and then integrate a Superman or a Zod, like those kind of superpowered beings into it?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not an easy task to do since a big part of this the selling point of the Batman was that it was realistic. I mean, it wasn't
So
necessarily
it's a bit
realistic. I mean,
stylized.
this guy, does the flying squirrel suit and hits a bridge and then a truck and then falls off and then he's completely unharmed. I don't know how realistic that is
He sort of
personally.
limped away, but
He
still,
limped
like
away and then never talks about it again.
that's fair.
But they can absolutely do this. I think that's what the plan was always for, the previous DCEU. That was the whole point of, having Superman really question his morality and why everybody was like, oh, well, I think if Warner Brothers is smart, and I'm not saying anything about that, they will
They've got a
learn
new
from all
ownership,
their
you know.
yeah, I think they will learn from all the viewership, all the positive and negative feedback that they've gone over the years, because a lot of their marketing has just been like, just risk it and see how it works out, or trying to work with what they think that the audience wants. And then turns out that the audience didn't want that in the first place. They actually wanted the original idea. So I think they're smart. They'll listen to the audience like they should have been years ago and saying, all right, well, this really worked when we did this. We really worked when we did this. And if they're going to build another DCEU, then honestly, the Batman is probably your best bet to start. I'm just going to say it. I have my opinion on it, but I think they're absolutely right. I mean, this is a really good world building, and I can see this world ever expanding.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna come at it from two angles. I think there's both a downside and an upside to doing this. And by doing this, I mean, of course, having the Batman be the foundation for a new shared DC universe, whatever you want to call it. We're gonna call it DCEU or the worlds of DC or whatever they call it behind the scenes of Warner Brothers.
And DCEU, new DCEU.
Ah, look at that. One more letter to an ever
Yes.
expanding abbreviation. So, um, there's to me there's the upside to this would be obviously you've got this hit property which its first iteration performed better than Man of Steel did. It was far
Mhm.
less divisive than Man of Steel was. So you all of a sudden have all the positive word of mouth and the good omens that come from that. Not to mention everything else that's already in development for this universe already. The one concern that a lot of people tend to bring up is, oh, well, how can you ground those characters like Superman and everything in there? I'm like, well, did you watch Man of Steel? That movie was basically a alien first contact story that to me felt like about as grounded a story as you can ever really truly do with a Superman character. I know in the third act things get crazy in terms of the action and the scale and the scope of destruction, but if you want to portray the true power of Superman, if you were to get in a fight with another superpowered human being or human-like being like Zod, then of course they would destroy buildings and blow up trains and cause the kind of damage that they did because you're either going to show them at that level of power or you're not. Like you power them down and they're not quite as super as we want them to be or would like for them to be. So I still think the realism and how it grounded the story worked well in Man of Steel. I'm a big fan of the movie. I know a lot of people probably weren't. It didn't get a positive reception for the most part, or it was mixed, and it still made plenty of money, like made almost $700 million. But
Yeah.
just like how they brought Batman into that world, I think you can bring Superman into this world. It will be a little more difficult if you were to like do the same thing with like a Martian Manhunter or a Wonder Woman. I still think actually Martian Manhunter can work really well, and I really, really wish it's been the law for the longest time. I really wish that somebody would make a good Martian Manhunter movie because I think that character, when done right in live action, can provide so much mythology for you to mine. Like I think if you watch
Yeah.
that movie John Carter, that did flop pretty hard for Disney and you apply the same kind of like fundamental like production design and like how they kind of went about telling that story to a Martian
Yeah.
Manhunter, but obviously with his mythology, John Carter on a fundamental storytelling perspective worked as a movie. It just wasn't marketed well and nobody went to see it and it just bombed.
Yeah.
And then Disney buried it as hard as they could because they wanted to look as amenable to George Lucas to buy Star Wars as they possibly could. So they didn't want like a John Carter kind of competing with that at the same time. But the point being, I do believe that you could bring in those other characters. Like, for example, in the current DCU, we have seen things like the Suicide Squad, which, for all of its crazy supernatural elements, it did feel grounded for a lot of like the military aspects of it. Even the new Shazam movies, the Black Adam movies, you do feel like they're grounded in a certain element of reality. Aquaman was
Yeah.
probably the most fantastical movie they've done in the DCU to this point, and maybe the Flash will up the ante on that. But I still feel like both of those movies will try to ground themselves in some form of reality because they still have to exist with that same world that the Man of Steel was based in, that Batman v Superman was based in, that even a
Yeah.
Birds of Prey was based in, and Birds of Prey was much more of a low budget, on the ground kind of a down and dirty film. So I think it can work. Now, where it I think is a bad idea has everything to do with the fact that I think the current DCEU, they've got way too much invested in there. Like they've got four new movies all in that same continuity coming out next year. You've got yeah, I think you start off with Shazam, then we have Blue Beetle, The Flash, and then Aquaman. You have and the Last Kingdom, the sequel to Aquaman.
Yeah.
So you have four movies within just the next 18 months that are going to be tied into the same continuity. We have Black Adam coming out this October, and then I think we still have Wonder Woman 3 in development with Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot coming back. So, they're going to round out that trilogy, which exists all in the same continuity, and they have already announced plans for, possibly like linking up Shazam and Black Adam in a same movie at some point down the road. Peacemaker is getting a season 2, which exists in the same continuity as all of that. And you've got other movies on the deck, hopefully. I mean, I'm hoping. There's rumors of, like, maybe Michael Keaton's Batman will be back for more appearances afterward. Maybe Ben Affleck isn't done. So they've got a lot invested, and or maybe they want to do a third Aquaman movie after, the second one. They've got a lot invested in this current version of the iteration of the DCEU. So from that perspective, I'm like, if you can have your cake and eat it too, why not? Like, you can have the Batman universe going. You've already got, like we talked about, you've got at least one, if not possibly two, if the Gotham PD show ever happens. You got possibly as many as two TV shows on HBO Max coming up. You've got a sequel to the movie that just made you a shit ton of money coming up. And there's, with the overall deal that Matt Reeves has, there's no end in sight to the more Batman content in that world.
Yeah.
So why not keep it separate? I mean, what do you think about the idea of just running these two universes simultaneously, and you have the Batman sort of doing his own thing and the DCU doing its own thing, which has its own Batman, granted, but the
Yeah.
majority of Batman content we'll get from Warner Brothers will be on the Batman world with Matt Reeves, whereas the DCEU will focus on basically everybody else, and its version of the Batman will kind of show up here and there. Like, do you think that could work?
That is a really brave concept. And I mean, I don't think it can be done. I'm just gonna say it. I think it would just be too confusing for mainly the audience. It would just be, you'd have to find a certain way to like really distinguish them, and like the marketing that has to be like very in your face, because I already know there's going to be so many people that are going to be like, oh, well, is it part of this or is it part of this, universe, because if it's ever expanding, it's ever connecting, then those paths are going to connect. And I don't know, Dan. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Well, they have already been doing that, right? Like, this Batman movie came out, and then we obviously have the Black Adam movie coming out later this year. Peacemaker aired not too long after the Batman, or was it airing before? It around the same time. So they've already been doing it. So it's not like this is going to be a new challenge. If anything, they're going to kind of have to continue to do what they have already been doing. So from that perspective, I feel like, if the status quo works, then why not continue with it? I mean, what do you think about the idea of um just kind of continuing the way things are? Because obviously so
Yeah.
far they've been working. I know some people have been asking questions, but I don't think
Yeah.
you can ever get rid of
I
every
definitely understand
question.
what you're saying, and I guess I'm still kind of just really holding on to the DCEU, and like really holding on to that desperate string of, connecting back to Man of Steel, because I always thought that there was so much potential that they could do with that, and they still are technically working with that timeline. But I mean, you're absolutely right. They're connecting the Reeves universe. They're connecting the Todd Phillips universe. They're, Joker
Well,
getting a
actually,
sequel.
but the Joker is, oh, that's another thing. So that's completely on its own continuity too. So the Joker movies are like completely separate from what they're doing here.
Yeah,
Heck, I don't even know if the new Constantine sequel that's in development now, I don't even know if that's going to connect to any of these other projects. It might just be another
I don't think it
standalone.
is. I think it's own entity, really,
Yeah,
because that's
so
what that first one was. So
I'm, here's the thing. Like, now let's say let's do a quick hypothetical. So we've talked about the pros and cons of having, one or the other, or both at the same time. But
yeah,
if they were to, like, decide we want to have one continuity and one shared cinematic universe like an MCU, where everything is connected and everything is in that one, whether it's a multiverse or whatever concept, but everything connects together. Um, if they were to do something like that, then how do you reconcile, like, all of the current iteration of the DCU that we've talked about? Like, they've got 4 movies on the slate, and if you count Black Adam as part of that upcoming slate, you have 5 movies, one this year, 4 more next year, and then a couple more in development for down the road, at least a couple of more. So how do you reconcile that with the Batman? I mean, can you merge those? Do you just kind of say, okay, this is it for the DCEU, done. Now we're going with the Batman stuff. Do you take a
Yeah.
hiatus and you could just start over with completely fresh? How do you if they wanted to kind of say we want to have everything under one umbrella of story, then how would you even do that?
I would say Flashpoint, but I
Okay.
don't think that they're capable of doing that. And I know that
Well, they
I
are
think Ezra
doing the
Miller was
Flashpoint
really,
storyline in that Flash movie. I don't know how in depth that's gonna go, but
yeah, but I think the plan was always to kind of merge worlds together and show Michael Keaton's Batman and do this and that. So I maybe, who knows? Fan theory?
well, they probably. I think the fact that Michael Keaton's back, I think, is almost a confirmation that the Tim Burton verse, if you will, is going to
Yeah.
be, brought into the same continuity, if not through a multiverse. I mean, probably it's going to be like it's another multiverse world, and it's not quite the prime continuity like the Earth One of the DCEU, but beyond that, I don't know what other versions of past DC properties they're going to integrate or future, or for all we know, Robert Pattinson shows up in that movie and you're like, oh, I see where they're going with this. Or like, Henry Cavill comes back in Black Adam or in The Flash or Ben
Yeah.
Affleck. I mean, we know Ben Affleck's going to be in that movie as the DCU Batman. I don't, I guess where I'm landing on this whole situation is, can the Batman start a new DCU? I think you and I agree that yes, you could potentially start an entire franchise where you bring in a Superman, you bring in a Wonder Woman, you bring in all the other DC heroes. You could do that in the world of the Batman. However, given that the DCU is, going relatively strong, I mean, I don't think they're in any dire straits. They've obviously, like I said, we have 5 movies coming up. They're at some point of production or being complete, with a few more in development. So it's not like it's a dead franchise that just needs to be, tucked away and shelved forever.
Yeah.
So it's not a question. Maybe the question isn't should they could they do it, but should they do it? And if you ask the question, should they do it? I personally think no, because unlike the MCU, the DCEU or Warner Brothers in general and DC Films has something unique here, which is they can have their cake and eat it too. You can get a really badass, grounded, realistic, grimy, and dirty Batman franchise running simultaneously in parallel with like the more fantastical, superpowered DCEU that feels more like what you get from a lot of MCU projects. And you could
Mhm.
still get the Joker and like for Joker 2 Folie à Deux, like, musical, like something so insanely different that I don't know if the MCU can even get away with doing something like that. I mean, maybe they can. I mean, we're getting She-Hulk after all these days, but um even She-Hulk has to tie into everything else within the continuity MCU, so you kind of get limited by what you can do. You sort of have to operate within the confines of a certain environment that you cannot like bust out of. Whereas Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga can do whatever the heck they want without having to worry about how it ties into the Batman or the Black Adam movie. And I think
Yeah.
that's something unique to DC, and they should keep it that way because it's working for them so far. And unless it's all of a sudden goes to shit, why bother changing it? I mean, optimize it further, make it better, take advantage of the flexibility that gives you. That's where I land on the subject. But Roland, do you agree or do you have a completely different mindset on that?
Uh, I don't know. I'm switching back and forth. So let's ask the fans. Do you would you rather that the universe connect and build upon itself, or do you think that characters aren't tied to actors and stories aren't tied to certain directors and people can extend and do this and that? So let us know in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe. Watch our other videos if you're interested in more conversation like this. And yeah, thank you.
All right, well, let's move on to the next thing. Then we're gonna be reviewing, or actually, not me, not us. Mags is going to
Not
be
us.
reviewing.
Yeah, right.
Well, I've been watching Rings of Power, so I do have a few things to say, but this is something that I think Mags has been taking the lead on. So she's did a review of episode 4 with
Mhm.
spoilers for the Rings of Power on Amazon Prime Video. So let's take a look.
The Rings of Power episode 4, the good stuff, the opening sequence. I must say, whenever the opening sequence starts, which was composed by the great Howard Shore, who did the score for Lord of the Rings, it magically just warms up my heart and makes me very excited about what's to come, what we're going to witness on the screen, and beautiful. Just like, I don't know, I have shivers when I watch the opening sequence, and it really makes you think of elves, and I don't know, I'm a big fan of elves. So we had Arondir. Is it Arondir? Arondir. So we had Arondir showing off his elvish skills and cinematography, and the slow-mo and how that was captured was just beautiful. And every time elves are on the screen, the magic happens. Apart from when Galadriel's in Numenor, that's actually a little bit boring. So Galadriel in Numenor. Yeah, I am tired of seeing Numenor. I was so excited to see the city when Galadriel arrived and sort of taking every inch of it, and I wanted to stay there a bit longer. But now that I'm actually there, I frankly don't care about anything that's happening there. I don't care for the Queen Regent. I don't really care about Isildur. I don't care about Elendil. It's almost like the creators of the show, they've given us all those great characters which they actually don't know what to do with them. They don't know how to make them great. It's almost like everyone's just sort of sitting and waiting to do something great that is just not happening. So even though Galadriel goes on this, that happened in the previous episode, but she, escaped, and then she sort of escaped from the prison, so she keeps escaping from places, but even that is just sort of like, meh, okay, we have seen it before. Next, what else? Yeah, it's very repetitive. It's lacks innovation, lacks vision. Yeah, Numenor can sort of sail away from me because I don't care anymore. Like, Harfoots have more genuine conversation between themselves than anyone else in Numenor. It's just so freaking stiff. It's very cringy. Like, when Galadriel interacted with the Queen Regent, I genuinely almost just shredded from cringe because, like, come on, no one speaks to each other like that. I know she's an elf, and I know she's very royal, and Queen Regent is also, very royal, but there's just no click. There's no click between those characters. Speaking of Harfoots, I actually really miss their presence, and I'm starting to think Harfoots are the soul of the series. That's the only genuine interaction that you will see. Okay, that and Elrond and Durin. I absolutely still 100% believe those two are friends, or they have been friends for a very long time. Everything else, not so much. So speaking of elves, Adar is an elf. I'll be kind of looking forward to see what his role is in the big master plan of Sauron. Dwarves find Mithril, which, again, spoilers, is something that awakened the Balrog in Lord of the Rings. So I love how the episode gave a lot of those nudges that this might happen, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to the return of Balrog. It's undeniable, the CGI of this series is spectacular. It's visually explosion of emotions, and it's really well done. It's just a script that lacks, and the actual points of all those characters, their missions or their purpose within the story. All those characters, Isildur, Elendil, Elrond, Galadriel, they naturally are going to appeal to fans that are already there. All those characters are someone we heard of and we really wanted to see their portrayal, or B, they're the characters from Lord of the Rings that we actually kind of wanted to see how they were before they become, great lords of Lorien and lady and lords of Lorien and Rivendell. And it's almost like this clickbaity, easy appeal for people to watch this series. It drags us fans on this weird, strange journey where it kind of satisfies your needs, but it's almost like someone shows you like this golden apple that looks beautiful on the surface, but it's just so rotten and core quality inside. For the first time, I felt like it was a chore to watch The Rings of Power. This series I've been waiting for ever since of Return of the King, and yeah, that's not what it was meant to be. Am I going to be watching the next episode? Yes, because I'm a fan of the Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth, and would I recommend it to someone who is a Lord of the Rings fan? Absolutely freaking not. There are better series out there for you to watch, to spend your time on.
Without it, what am I to be?
Okay, so here's this new movie coming out. It feels like it's an Agatha Christie whodunit, Knives Out-esque kind of a story. We're gonna dive into the spoiler review here. I did not go to see the movie, but Roland did. The gist of it, from what I understand, is it's based in 1950s London, where a planned movie version of a hit stage play is being worked upon, but right as they're about to get started, a pivotal member of the crew gets murdered, and then so we get a pair of cops who kind of come in, and they have to do the work of figuring out who is the killer, and obviously some of the suspects are the people who are working on the play itself. So with that in mind, Roland, let's dive into it. I mean, the cast is stacked. You got Sam Rockwell, Saoirse Ronan. There's like Harris Dickinson, Adrian Brody. I think like
Yeah.
Pearl Chanda. There's all kinds of people in this movie. Searchlight Pictures went out and got a great cast, and it certainly looks like it was shot well. The production design is great. It looks like it's a proper period film. But you went and saw this movie. What did you think about it?
Let me just say that it is a good movie. I said a little bit on Instagram in my overall analysis is that it's okay. And I say that because it's dealing with a lot of concept that's been done before. I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but my background is Hail Caesar, because that's what
Yeah.
this movie reminds me of. Like you look at this film, you're like, oh my, yeah, Hail Caesar, I saw this, but it's not. It's a totally different movie. And it's a lot of this movie is kind of dealing with like, oh my gosh, yeah, these cliches and this and that, aren't they so boring? Literally, that's like one of the first lines is like, whodunits are so boring, they're so predictable. The biggest jerk gets killed first and blah, blah, blah. And that happens. And throughout the whole movie is just like all the cliches that they mentioned. Now, they do amazing job with foreshadowing. There's so many instances and so many layers of foreshadowing that I have to give them praise for, because they did a fantastic job at that. And they do have this cast, but I feel like maybe, I don't know, maybe it was the directing, maybe it was something, but like a lot of these jokes, they just didn't punch as hard as they could have been. And I feel like there was always something missing, and there was never this true sense of originality. It kept feeling like it was taking inspiration from everything, but actually wanting to be its own story. A lot of it is, dealing with the Agatha Christie play and turning it into a movie, and even having somebody play the famous writer. It just, it was doing a lot, but it wasn't doing enough, if that makes sense.
Okay, so so from what you're saying is basically it's super meta in that not only is it dealing with an Agatha Christie-like story, it literally incorporates the author or
It's
a
literally
fictionalized
dealing with,
version of the author
yeah,
into the movie. So it's because I was thinking this is like a Knives Out-esque movie, which I suppose that's not entirely false, because it is a Knives Out-esque movie. Like, this movie very much has like all the whodunit elements, which Knives Out Knives Out takes place in the present day, and it sort of kind
yeah,
of tries to tie into all of those elements that were made famous by Agatha Christie. But this movie sort of says, okay, we're gonna go into the mouth of the lion and try to tell a story with Agatha Christie being a part of the story. So
yeah.
it's like a Deadpool. So maybe the good analogy would be, this movie is to Agatha Christie whodunit movies that Deadpool is to a superhero movie.
Honestly, I would say this is the Scream of whodunits,
Okay.
but less. Let me see if I can make this analogy. The Scream of whodunits, mimicking Hail Caesar. How's that?
Okay. I can follow that. I can follow that.
Yeah.
That's
Scream, of
so
course, is a fantastic horror movie from the 1990s, which started the whole meta craze of, pointing fun at cliche horror films. So I feel like that's the best way to explain this.
so with that in mind, I mean, you said that it does a lot, but it doesn't do enough. I mean, where is the disconnect at? Is it the acting? Is there too much going on? Is there do you
There's
think it's a
too much going
director?
on. There's too much of the director writer trying to convince the audience of like, hey, like I watch a lot of whodunits too, and I know all the cliches, and here are the cliches. Let me explain it to you, and then let me show it to you on screen in case you were totally oblivious. It was just like, just chill out with the cliches. Just let's enjoy the movie. You don't have to keep circling back to the cliches that you've talked about, or at least have like a twist to it. And it was just, and even to when you find out the killer, it's honestly pretty basic. I don't know if I want to get, Dan,
No, you don't have to give it away if you don't want to. It's up to. I mean, we did put a spoiler warning up, so it's your call if you wanted to give it away. But before we even do any of that, the biggest thing that anybody going into a whodunit movie is looking for is that the big twist at the end should be something that you don't see coming, because otherwise the whole experience is sort of feels hollow and not worth it. Because if you can, I mean, because there's the thing, the key to a movie like this working, where you're trying to do this murder mystery whodunit, you want to be led into all these different directions, and you sort of want the audience guessing the whole time. But then if the majority of your audience manages to guess who the actual killer is pretty early and then gets it right, then I don't think you're doing your job as a filmmaker, because then what's the point of a whodunit? Like, your audience already figured it out less than halfway through the movie. But if the audience you leave them surprised, you leave them like, oh my God, I didn't, what? Like, that's how like all those reality shows work, where you're like, oh, five of you guys are trying to win a prize, but one of you is secretly trying to, ruin everybody
Yeah.
else's chances. That's basically like the same idea. And the reason why those shows are so popular is because people want to be enthralled by the mystery, and at the end find out like it's somebody that they never saw coming. So from that perspective, what you're saying is this movie kind of makes the cardinal sin, or of a whodunit, which is it becomes predictable. Is that, am I getting that right?
I mean, when you watch the movie, necessarily you probably couldn't predict I'm just gonna say it. You don't necessarily predict like who the character is. And then you like watch back and you're like, oh yeah, it makes sense. But then you close your eyes, you don't even think about like how the story's progressing. You think of like, all right, who is gonna be the most cliche, who's gonna be the most basic character they can pick? Oh, it's one of the people from the lobby that we repeatedly see. It's one of those guys, like one of the servers. And that's always like the whole like, oh, the butler did it. Like, even if you don't know who done it, oh, the butler did it. So it's just kind of like you could have made it a little more enticing, and then you have Saoirse's a character who is a rookie constable who's always like predicting things. Like she's always jumping the gun and being like, oh, there's this motive, clearly it's this person. And Sam Rockwell was like, can you just chill out for 1 second, please? No, it's not that. It might be, but we don't know. That's not
Yeah.
enough evidence. And kind of getting to the scene where we're supposed to believe Sam Rockwell is the killer, because you get these very vague details and there's that kind of twist. But even then, it's kind of like, that doesn't make any sense. That's a really dumb twist. And it's just this kind of like laughs. There's so much to do when you're working with being meta and being aware, that I feel like it's so easy for writers to kind of go into becoming a basic plot, the very thing that they're making fun of. So that's That's kind of what I'm
Okay.
seeing in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like with meta content, with any kind of meta story you're trying to tell, whether it's a movie, a TV show, whatever, the key is finding the balance. You want to kind of walk the
Yeah.
line, but you don't want to cross it because then you're going from, poking fun at like the cliches of the genre or whatever concept you're being meta about, and more or less just the suspension of disbelief. You cannot suspend disbelief anymore because all of a sudden you're like, well, this whole thing is a joke. They don't really care because I think
Yeah.
when meta content works well is it pokes fun at some of the cliches, but it still maintains a certain level of respect for what that genre or that concept ultimately stands for. Like Deadpool, like for example, I'll draw the analogy again. A Deadpool movie, those two Deadpool movies work well because they're meta, they're poking fun at a lot of the cliches of the genre, but as a superhero movie, it still delivers the goods, and it
Yeah.
respects like the ultimately, the character arc. They
The
respect that.
formula.
They have a villain, they have a conflict, you have the fights. They're poking fun at it along the way, but if you were to like take all the meta stuff out of it, you would still get a very solid superhero movie. So what you're saying is, while it is meta and it's sort of entertaining in a way, ultimately where this movie kind of falls short is being a really good whodunit, Agatha Christie like esque movie, and that's maybe what
Yeah,
kind of helps it fall short.
I think if this came out in 1950s, it would be insanely unique, insanely but it's just it doesn't do anything new. You take away all the meta, you take away the jokes, you still have a plot that's not really all that special. It's nothing crazy. And I don't want to be too negative about this movie because we often do this. We start talking about like what the problem is, and it's super easy to kind of
Kind of
snowball.
snowball. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I will say I did find a lot of this entertaining. There were some really cool some bits and pieces, and I do there are some jokes with like Sam Rockwell that are kind of that I like a lot. I'm trying to be positive and I'm doing a bad job
Okay,
at it. So
okay.
I
Well,
apologize.
let me just ask you a simple question, right? I know like we've kind
Okay.
of gone into the story, we've talked about the acting, we've talked about what works, what doesn't. But ultimately, if somebody's watching this review and they want to know if you recommend the movie or not, do you recommend it?
Not in theaters. No.
Okay, so you're thinking wait for it to show up on like Hulu and then check it out then.
Yeah, if you see it on TV or you see it like on streaming and you have a chance and yeah, watch it. It's not necessarily a bad film. It's just there could have been a lot more done with this. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Well, I mean, right now there's not a whole lot of movies in theaters, so this is one of a few there are. Certainly not a lot of big movies in theaters. I mean, The Woman King came out this week. That I
Yeah.
think is leading the box office on the weekend. It's got a
Got
wider release than this one does.
yeah. I think
We didn't get
six
a
and a
chance to go
half
see it,
million.
but if we do, we will review it. There's also other movies like Clerks 3, which is even in more limited release than what this movie is in. But
Yeah.
of all the choices you have, I mean, See How the Run is one of them. If you have seen it, if you want to go see it, do let us know what you think about it. We of course have told you what we thought about it, or at least Roland, you told us what you thought about it. I have not seen it. I would love to go see it still. I may not go see it in theaters though. I may heed your advice on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you guys have an opinion on the film and you would like to share it with us, we would appreciate it if you'd love to comment down below. We would love to hear from you. We do feature comments on the show once a week, comment of the week, we call it. So we'd love to feature your comment there and then, address it and talk about it. If you have a question, you can leave that down there as well. Like and subscribe. Whether you don't like, we will take it both ways, a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We appreciate the interaction. That's what counts. We really appreciate that you guys are making the effort to hit that button, whether it's the thumbs up button or the thumbs down button, but do hit the subscribe button. That one matters. We really, so you can keep coming back to us. We review new movies every week, and we'd love for you to check out all of those reviews. So now we move on to the next thing, and this one we talked about at the beginning of the show. Betty White passed away earlier this year at the age of 99. She almost was 100, wasn't it? Like she was very close to her 100th birthday, if I remember correctly.
I think
Um,
she was gonna become 100 this January.
Right, and did she I thought she passed away in January. Am I
I
wrong
believe
about that?
she died on December 31st. That's right. She didn't make it to New Year's. I remember that being a big deal.
Oh, wow. That
Because I
is
saw some jokes of being like, oh wow, 2022 is so bad that Betty White didn't even want to be a part of it.
well, she was of course a Golden Girl, and the Golden Girls celebrated, I believe it's 35th anniversary of its premiere in what would that be, 1978, I think it was. No, 19
When Golden Girls aired,
yeah, when it premiered, was it
85.
1987? 85.
Yeah.
So September 14, 1985 is when it first premiered. So, that now we're celebrating at, well, maybe I did my math wrong. What does that mean? The 37th anniversary or something like that?
It
Um,
is
if I'm
37, correct? Yep.
37, yeah. So it's
Got
been
it. You got it.
37 years. There we go. It's been 37 years since the premiere of The Golden Girls, and of course Betty White was one of the featured actors. That's where she, I think, truly rose to fame, especially for the people who are alive and around today. They probably remember her from that more than anything else she did. And we just wanted to pay a tribute to the life and career of Betty White, because of course she's one of those icons that will forever be timeless, and even though she may be gone, she will stay with us in our hearts forever and ever. So let's take a look.
There was nothing old about the Golden Girl of Hollywood, who brought light and laughter to every radio speaker and television screen she graced. Raised through the Great Depression, the first woman to produce a sitcom in America, developed the drive and resilience actors need to break through to become classics, like Betty White. When she could not be a forest ranger, she turned to writing and acting. And when movie studios shut the door on the apparently not photogenic model, she became one of the biggest personalities in radio. In fact, it was her personality that led to the development of The Betty White Show, and eventually to breaking through to TV as a host on Hollywood on Television. Performing sketches,
I've looked all over and I can't find the powder room. Oh, no wonder. You've been looking in the house. Oh, never mind.
singing,
It's time to say hello again.
and ad-libbing through live broadcasts 5 days a week, appearing more and more in commercials, and as a frequent guest on the Hollywood Squares. Password. To Tell the Truth, and the $25,000 Pyramid. The First Lady of game shows won audiences over starring in the sitcom she produced, Life with Elizabeth. She went from television pioneer to fan favorite on The Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Oh, my poor baby.
And emerged an adored classic as Rose Nyland on the mega hit, The Golden Girls.
He made me feel beautiful.
It made me feel young.
He made me feel smart. God, what an actor.
An iconic character that shined for 7 seasons. A spin-off. And even appearances on other TV shows. Her fame revitalized with roles on Boston Legal, The Proposal, and hosting a hugely successful episode of Saturday Night Live. Through all her work, Betty White demonstrated unabashed authenticity, embracing her gender, her looks, and her age, to consistently show the world something unexpectedly fun and unquestionably unique.
Okay, so we are back, and yeah, so this week has been one busy week for new content and new movies and new TV shows and like ongoing stuff. But next week we'll have even more coming our way. So we'll have Don't Worry, Darling. It's going to be coming out in theaters. That movie has all kinds of controversy around it. It's not sitting with a very good Rotten Tomatoes review right now. The last I checked, it was sitting at like 36% off 59 reviews. It debuted at the Venice Film Festival, to just as much controversy of what the actors were doing as much as, you know, maybe like what the movie's actually about. Blonde is another movie. Ana de Armas, you know, plays the titular character in there of Marilyn Monroe, and that's a movie that's we're starting to see reviews come out now, and they're not entirely favorable. I mean, but the one thing is, regardless of what you think about it, most people are saying this thing is brutal. It's visceral. It's something that when you watch it, just be prepared, you know, to sit through something that's not going to be an easy watch. It's not like you're going to be going to watch a Guardians of the Galaxy. It's not even like if you're watching the Batman, or like it's going to be a heavy, I mean, maybe they're not the best comparisons to make, but it's going to be a heavy movie. It's not going to be like a See How They Run. This is going to be a movie that I mean, you probably can't watch with the whole family. Actually, no, you can't watch it with the whole family.
It's NC-17.
It is NC-17,
watch
yeah.
it with your whole family.
Yeah, I hope. I mean, unless your whole family is like, you know, they're all adults and they can all. I mean, you know, everybody's families are different, and you know, to each their own. But it's not going to be an easy watch. Is basically what the consensus so far is. And then of course
It's
we have
almost 3
Andor.
hours long, so it's not an easy
That too.
watch on that aspect either.
Yeah, the runtime alone, you may have to pause it a few times. I mean, which it's a Netflix, so you don't have to, you know, thankfully you have to worry about missing anything if you walked out of a theater to get for a restroom break. Andor, by the way, is the other thing. I don't know if you touched upon it at all earlier in the show, but this is the newest Star Wars project. It's a TV series. It's I think a prequel to another prequel. So it's a prequel to Rogue One, which was a prequel to the original trilogy. It's featured and centered around the main character of Cassian Andor. So that's where the name of the series comes from. It's going to debut with a 3-episode premiere on Disney Plus on Wednesday at midnight. So Roland, between Don't Worry, Darling, Blonde, and Andor, which of those 3 are you most interested in? And would you be watching all 3 of them, or are you going to be picking and choosing what you decide to pay attention to?
This is a tough one because I feel like this options have so many things going for it. I mean, the Don't Worry, Darling drama has just been all over the internet and just causing this craze. And, you know, now we're getting these bad reviews, and you just have to wonder, like, what is going on with this movie? Honestly, I hate to be that guy, but with all this buzz, I want to see it. I just want to see how bad it is, how ridiculous it is, I just want to see how it goes. And I also want to see Blonde. As a kid, my mom always had like a Marilyn Monroe poster and always talked about Norma Jean, and then learning her story and how crazy that is. And honestly, even as somebody that's like not a Star Wars fan, I don't know if I'll watch Andor, but I do kind of want to know how it goes, because it seems interesting that they're still going with a prequel of a prequel, you know, so we'll see.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean, they
excited.
got
I'm sorry.
no. Hey, they have in Andor, you've got like Stellan Skarsgård in it. You have Adria Arjona, who I think has been in it, like she was in Morbius. Stellan Skarsgård obviously been in the MCU. He's of the Skarsgård clan. Um, so the cast is stacked. I love the concept of the show, like getting into the real like down and dirty work that the rebellion had to do to basically set up Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker to then and Han Solo and such to go out and then ultimately like win the day and defeat the Empire.
Yeah.
Like in order for all that to happen, these people had to set the groundwork. And so for me, a show that kind of like gets in to the darker side of the rebellion, that's something that's unique. It's something unique. It's something that Star Wars is not known to show much of. Star Wars tends to, for all of its lived-in, dirty, grimy look that we get from Star Wars, it is a franchise that generally likes to stick to kind of keeping it family friendly. Even The Mandalorian, like it doesn't veer too far away from the familial themes. So
Yeah.
so with that in mind, I'm really looking forward to seeing like what Andor does, because it's going to be different. Clearly different
Yeah.
from a lot of these other Star Wars shows that we've seen on Disney Plus. And they shot a lot of this on location or with big time sets in England. It's not your, Obi-Wan like show where they shot a lot of it on the volume. And so you're
Yeah.
not going to get a lot of that. Like, some of the visual effects that looked weird that people criticized Obi-Wan Kenobi for or Boba Fett for. This show looks like it's as
This looks
close to watching a
fantastic.
Star Wars movie on TV as you're going to get. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the set decoration, the costumes, the graphic, that looks amazing. That
Yeah.
that looks really good. That's wow.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Blonde. I mean, Blonde is like I said, this is not going to be an easy watch. I mean, this,
No,
Marilyn
not at all.
Monroe was taken advantage of her whole life, and this movie's and the
Yeah.
director said as much, like that their goal here is to show you like the graphic nature of like how she was taking advantage of the whole career, what she had to do to make it in Hollywood. To some people, like who have watched this movie, they're like, do we really need to go that far? Like, why do we need to tie it into the story? Why don't we do a fictional narrative? Why do we have to tie it into the life of a person who's not around to defend herself anymore, or tell her own account, or really
The people
give any
involved.
sense of authorization to like, I want to be portrayed this way. Like maybe for example, if she was alive and all of this stuff did happen, but she just doesn't want that to be out in the in the public purview. Those are some of the concerns I've heard about this movie. But look, it is a fascinating character study, if there ever was any. So I am really excited to see where they take it. It's not the
Yeah.
kind of movie that I'll be tuning into like at 8 p.m. at night, where everybody's like, around on the couch around the living room. It's probably like, midnight on a Saturday. All right, let's put this on. Let's see what's up. And it's just like, or maybe like, I don't even know if I want to watch this on my TV, or I don't know. I guess we'll see. That depends on where I'm at in the day. Like sometimes I've started to like watch movies while I'm at working. So like I'll have it playing on my iPad or a screen out to the side. And I've never been that kind of a person. Like to me, like watching a movie is a holy experience. Like you got to watch it on the best sound and with the best sound and the best picture possible. But
Yeah.
then like a movie like this may not lend itself to that kind of viewing. Anyway, I'm excited to see it. It is a biopic. How accurate it is in terms of like what happened in real life, I haven't done enough research to tell you, but I'm looking forward to it. Don't worry, darling. Like you said, I have a morbid curiosity about it. It's
Yeah. It's the best way to
if
put
not
it.
for any other reason than just to see how much of a train wreck it might be. Like that's to me like one sentence why I would go watch this movie. They've got a good cast, so I guess I don't know. I'm the optimist in me says, just how bad can it be? Uh, who knows? If I had
Yeah.
to pick one, I would say Andor is what excites me the most. Like that's to me like the one that's charting. I mean, despite the fact that it's the one franchise property out of all of these three, for some reason I believe that that's charting more new ground than any of these other shows or movies will. So, which is weird to say that, but that's why I'm excited to watch 3 episodes, which basically equals like a movie runtime level of yeah, my camera battery just died. A movie. Yeah, I'm excited to watch Andor. I don't know. What of these 3 things are you, if any, out of the 3 are you most excited about?
If I had to pick one, I am going to say Don't Worry, Darling. Because I picked that one. What do you guys think, though? I mean, our opinion at the end of the day, it's just influence what you guys think. So let us know what you think. Please comment. Please let us know which one you're going to watch, which one you're setting reminders for, going out of your way to watch it. Let us know. And also, like and subscribe. See, somebody subscribed. That's how we were able to see Dan's face. I'm telling you
There
guys,
we
we
go.
have power.
Oh
I had
yeah,
no idea.
yeah. That's
Look at that.
it's like that. What is it? The in
Tinkerbell?
Monsters Inc. When the scream,
Oh, never mind.
the screams power, like the yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, when you hit the subscribe button, the battery that running the camera that I'm using, it gets a little extra juice. That's
Exactly.
how it works. Yes, your subscribes power, literally power this channel. But yeah, I'm glad that we had a chance to talk about all of these things. I think it's gonna be exciting to talk about all of these various movies and TV shows as we've been doing for some time now.
Yeah.
I personally, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Andor looks like. Like I think I've already said it many times. I probably will stay up till 3 a.m. just to watch it, and might be up until 6 a.m. But I don't know about you, because on East Coast time it's gonna release at 3 a.m., which is ridiculously late. Anyway, Roland, it's been a pleasure.
Dan?
Until next time, then, right? We will
I suppose so.
talk to you. Yeah.